Today is a great, wonderful, amazing, incredible day, and I'll tell you why. Because it's Sweden Day. The insane, in capital letters, truth about IKEA. Without further ado, let's get into this reaction. Let's go. Chapter 4, the IKEA Effect. Sounds very dramatic.
One day when Ingvar finished photographing one of IKEA's new tables, as they were packing it back up, one of his employees had difficulty fitting it into his car. He noted that the table used up a lot of empty space. So he suggested something that would change IKEA's course forever. Why not take off the legs? Shortly after, they got their first prototype. You could screw an
Flat pack. That's just genius. Like, the IKEA model is just genius, isn't it? Like the flat pack furniture. The amount of IKEA stuff that I put together is insane.
Screw the table's legs into position easily, and Ingvar instantly realized how beneficial this would be to IKEA. Selling items sold in pieces that are flattened to make transport easier, or flat pack furniture as they called it, would be another turning point for IKEA. Because now they could take a piece of furniture apart, IKEA's packaging became much more compact. This meant the furniture could be stored and transported more efficiently and cheaply, they spent less on packaging materials, and there was much less chance of an item being damaged in transit. In other words, flat packing instantly cut the company's costs and made distribution faster and safer. And remember, prior to the 1950s, you'd normally be waiting a while for your furniture to be made and delivered, but now you could take it home with you the same day. It was win-win. Plus, all of this had another positive effect on IKEA's customers. Researchers discovered a cognitive bias which they called the IKEA Effect, where they realized consumers value products more highly if they've been partially involved in making them. Because many of IKEA's furniture pieces now came in parts, customers actually had to build them at home, and by physically putting the items together themselves, they had a sense of pride and ownership over the item, which
psychological. It's a psychological thing, isn't it? Wow. So because you've purchased it and I was just saying, yeah, the amount of, I was literally just saying before literally 2 minutes ago, oh, when I've put together so many IKEA pieces together and I've built so many cabinets, it makes you feel like you've built it because it was flat packed and you put it together. It's a sense of, you get a proper sense of ownership because you built it yourself. This is too good.
Which meant more of an emotional attachment to it, and so they valued the item more highly. For IKEA, this meant their customers had a higher level of loyalty to the brand. And so finally, after a decade of battling with their competitors stuck in their old ways, IKEA had evolved beyond their influence. Ingvar knew that IKEA was now perfectly positioned for rapid expansion, and his plans were more ambitious and stranger than ever before.
Stranger? An empire by design.
After IKEA's success with their first store, Ingvar had decided to open a new store that was bigger and better in every way. For the location, Ingvar chose Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. But instead of a spot in the heart of the city, he picked a location way outside, basically in the countryside.
And you know what? That has been the model for IKEA ever since. I'm pretty sure. Anytime I've been to an IKEA, it tends to be out of the city. Like a bit, you have to travel to get to IKEA. It's not in the city because the buildings are so big, they're like factory-sized buildings. They tend to be outside the city, and people will travel to IKEA to do all their furniture shopping. This guy's a genius. When I think about people like that, I'm like, I wish I thought of an idea like that. It's like, and executed, not just thought about it, but executing an idea like that. Brilliant, brilliant mind.
This way, Ingvar got a massive discount on real estate, so the IKEA store could be huge. It was about the size of 8.5 football fields and had 3 separate floors.
Wow.
But if Ingvar was going to take on such a massive project, he needed to perfect IKEA's concept, and this is where he showed his true brilliance. Ingvar designed the store in a way that exploited every aspect of his customer's psychology. It worked like this. When a customer entered IKEA, they took a slip of paper to write down a code for every item they were going to buy, so they didn't have to carry anything around the shop. Despite its vast size, the store had just one entrance and one exit. which wasn't always the easiest to find. People could wander around the different areas for a while, but generally everything flowed in a single direction, as customers were guided through the entire store in a one-way path. It was...
Mate, I don't know how... Was this his idea? Because did he study psychology? Because the way that he designed it, so you're almost like trapped like a mouse in a mouse maze. You have to walk through the entire store and see everything before you can leave. And every time you're walking, you may go in the IKEA for one item, but because you're trying to get to that one item that might be in the middle of the store, you're walking. Oh my God, I might need that. Oh, is that some forks? Is that cutlery? Oh, you know what? We could do with a few more of those. Look at this cushion. Look at this plant, this fake plant. Oh, I need that for the... You don't need it, but you get it anyways because it's looking at you. And then when he set up like showrooms, like the little bedrooms, mate, I'm sure he's going to speak about that.
It was almost like a bit of a maze, with curves every 50 feet to keep customers intrigued about what would be coming up next. This also meant you were basically forced to look through all departments and see every item in the store before reaching the exit. You don't just pop in and buy one thing, you see everything they have to offer, encouraging impulse buys for things you hadn't even planned to purchase. With this in mind, Ingvar designed the layout in 3 main stages. First was the showroom, which was meant for bigger, expensive things like kitchen and bedroom furniture. Then came the market line, which was meant for smaller, cheaper items like silverware and decorations. And finally, there was the warehouse, where customers picked out the packages with the codes they wrote down and paid for them. However, whilst Ingvar's design seems innocently logical on the surface, there are 3 brilliant psychological tricks going on behind the scenes. Firstly, every exhibit inside the store exploited something called the Gruen effect, which means a display's layout and lighting are designed to draw people in and make them take their time wandering around. The more time customers spent inside IKEA, the more likely it was that they made an impulse decision to buy some piece of furniture. In fact, research suggests that the majority of purchases at IKEA are unplanned. Secondly, since the store was so huge and it only flowed in one direction, it meant that customers better write down the code for the more expensive products at the beginning right away, because otherwise...
It's true. I think we've all fall prey to purchasing things we didn't need when we went to IKEA. And then you're like, oh, I've gone to IKEA, I need to get some meatballs. I need to get some Swedish meatballs while I'm there. I have to do that. And it's just, it's brilliant.
Otherwise, they'd have to walk all the way to the end and start the entire maze again from scratch, which could take hours.
Yeah.
And thirdly, since more expensive items were at the beginning of the store, by the time customers got to the cheaper items near the end, the price of a new decoration seemed like a bargain compared to that of a massive dining table. Again, this price anchoring leads to more impulse purchases. As a result of all this, IKEA became more of an experience than a typical shop. You could spend hours there. However, Ingvar did notice one problem. In the mornings, IKEA was usually full of customers, but business always slowed down after lunchtime when customers went out for a meal. But what if people didn't leave to get food? Then they could spend all day there. Ingvar figured that by opening a restaurant inside IKEA, the food sales would not only generate extra money, but people would stay at IKEA for more time. And even better, if the food was good, people might come in just for a bite to eat and end up buying some furniture as well. With these strategies in place, IKEA was making more money than ever. But Ingvar also had a stroke of good luck. You see, at the time, IKEA was considered the cheapest furniture business in Sweden, but low prices can often lead people to thinking a product is of low quality as well. But when an impartial Swedish design laboratory gave every item a quality test, comparing IKEA products with more expensive competitors, the results were astounding. IKEA actually had superior quality across the board. Previously, IKEA's quality had been stigmatized because of its lower prices. But thanks to this report, IKEA was now seen as both the financially sound and the more tasteful option. Because of this, when IKEA's next new store opened in 1965, more than 18,000 people showed up on its first day. Ingvar's expansion plan was working better than he could have ever dreamed, and IKEA was growing like never before. By 1973, IKEA was making tens of millions every year and had over 1,000 employees. Although, oddly enough, Ingvar still ran it like a small family business. The main office was in an old barn on the family farm, and yet they now had a successful formula they could replicate anywhere. However, Ingvar wanted IKEA to live forever, long after he was gone, and this would lead to a very controversial plan.
now. I'm smiling because I'm like, how brilliant is this man to have thought of this type of idea that is going to last forever? IKEA, I cannot see IKEA going anywhere. If you move into a new home and it's unfurnished and you're like, oh, we need to get a lot of furniture at once. And that's the key thing, a lot of furniture at once. I need to furnish an entire flat. Oh, let's go to IKEA. Because why? Because you can get everything all at once. You can go there and look at the furniture and say, I want that, pick it, order it, and it can get delivered to your home. It's just genius. Tax troubles. Taxes. We don't like that.
Ingvar's dream was for his children to inherit the business, but Sweden's inheritance taxes were extremely high. So instead, Ingvar hired an army of lawyers from all over the world. Their mission was to make IKEA independent of any single country and protect it from any harmful outsiders trying to take it over. It took IKEA's lawyers more than 7 years of making shell companies, foundations and trusts in every tax haven in the world, but in the end, IKEA's corporate structure became an impenetrable and untaxable labyrinth. The original IKEA company became owned by a holding company whose profits are moved to a tax-exempt non-profit, who later indirectly moves its money into the Stichting INGKA Foundation, which is based in the Netherlands. Completely apart from this is a trust, which owns a Dutch holding company, which owns another holding company in Luxembourg, which owns IKEA's intellectual property. If you're thinking all of this sounds very confusing, you're right, and that's just a grossly oversimplified version. The point is that IKEA's complicated structure has led to controversy, with many accusing the company of reorganizing itself in order to avoid paying taxes. Today, 50 years after this restructuring took place, the foundation Ingvar created is technically the 4th largest charity in the world. But either way, in the time it took IKEA to become a tax-exempt Dutch charity, Ingvar was busy replicating the success in his first stores across the rest of the world, and perfecting the formula even more each time.
I love how he spoke about taxes really quickly and has moved on. That's how the rich stay rich, guys. That's how the rich stay rich. Rich people don't pay taxes. Yeah, wealth is kept in families. So you know when they say it's they run a charity. They run a charity owned by the family. Yeah, a charity that's owned by the family. Probably that charity employs his family members. So basically, all the money that's been made with IKEA and it's gonna stay in his family forever. Forever. That wealth will be in his family forever because there are trusts, there are charities, and there are company directors and all these roles he would have given to his family so that they don't have to ever pay inheritance tax. It's crazy, man. Rich people are actually like insane because they know all the loopholes. How do I feel about that? How do you guys feel about that? Should people be able to pass on their wealth to generations like over and over again? But should people be able to avoid taxes like inheritance tax, you know? Because the average person has to pay inheritance tax. If you have a house and you pass your house on to your child, you're going to have to pay inheritance tax. It's not fair. It isn't fair. But yeah, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? I think these loopholes are open to everybody in a way. You're not going to have a team of lawyers being able to help you on it, but there are ways to legally avoid taxes. But should you legally avoid taxes, shouldn't you pay taxes because we all pay taxes, especially in Sweden where taxes are higher and you all benefit from those high taxes through, you know, all the social benefits that you get from your government. Should someone who is also, to be fair, benefited from these social benefits, should they be able to avoid paying high taxes on their wealth? Let me know in the comment section. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a very controversial topic. Yeah, let me know how you feel about rich people keeping their wealth in their family for generations. It's kind of insane. Anyways, let's go.
By the end of the 70s, there were more than 20 new IKEA stores in countries like Canada, Switzerland and Australia, and Ingvar's plans for the 80s were even more ambitious. However, Ingvar wasn't prepared for what was coming next. The dark shadow of his past was catching up to him, and it would launch him into the biggest controversies of his life.
Yeah, the Nazi thing, because his mum was a Nazi or whatever, or Nazi supporter or Nazi sympathizer. They will try to bring you down. If you're a successful, an incredibly successful person, you better clean up house. Anything you've done in your past, if you've ever done anything wrong in your past, you better either apologize for that or clean it up, because people will drag your past and try and make you pay for it. Like, it's just how it is. That's where you see celebrities. Some celebrities have done some very horrible things, but there are some celebrities that I believe haven't done anything, but they just go into their past and be like, oh, there was a time that he dated me and didn't want to be with me, and I'm going to say that he sexually abused me. Now, any victim that comes forward and says something has happened to them, you should believe them and you should investigate that. But I do believe successful people have a target on their back. And there are some successful people that probably have been wrongly accused of things. Conversely, is that the right word? There's also a lot of celebrities that have done some horrible, heinous stuff. So it's difficult. It's difficult, you know? And a lot's coming out about celebrities in the past and what they've done. It's hard, isn't it? When you've got money, clearly there's going to be targets on your back. And the way to ruin someone's reputation is to try and frame them for something. But also in the past, people used to get away with things. So it's hard. I would hate to be a multimillionaire celebrity. Not even, or just a well-known person, because you're constantly trying to fight fires. So let's see what he had to deal with. Let's see.
Before we get to the next chapter, I want to help you save time and money with today's video sponsor, ShipStation. ShipStation integrates everywhere you sell online, including Amazon, Etsy, eBay, .com/magnates.
Ghost of the past. That's what I said. They'll dig up your past.
During the 80s, IKEA was growing at its fastest rate ever. But Ingvar still saw everyone involved in the company as family. He was famous for meeting employees with a big bear hug, getting to know as many of them as he could, and all round being loved by everybody. However, not many people outside of IKEA personally knew Ingvar. He was just the owner of some giant Swedish furniture company. So when a journalist discovered that Ingvar had been an avid Nazi enthusiast in his youth, his entire reputation was at stake. In 1994, the journalist reached out to Ingvar for comment, to which Ingvar wrote back saying he was willing to talk openly about everything. After all, Ingvar was indoctrinated into Nazi ideology through his grandmother, but he was too young to think independently. Now that the terrible reality of the Third Reich was public information, he'd changed his views completely. So Ingvar thought that by being totally transparent about everything, any controversy would go away once people heard his story. However, the journalist had come across 2 documents alleging that Ingvar had attended a fascist meeting as late as 1958. At that point, World War II had been over for a decade, and Ingvar was 32 years old. This was no longer a story about an innocent boy who had been indoctrinated by his family. It was a story about a mature businessman who might just be an active Nazi. And when the story broke out, newspapers in all of Europe circulated the rumor. IKEA went into crisis mode and demanded answers from its founder. Ingvar wrote an open letter to everyone, openly explaining the story of his indoctrination, his involvement with the Swedish Nazi Party, expressing his regrets, and begging.
Guys, I just need to, I don't know, Swedish National Party, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. But now I know it's a thing. I have to learn about the Swedish Nazi Party. It's insane.
Begging for everyone's forgiveness. As for the accusation that he was an active Nazi, Ingvar disproved it by saying that 1958, the year of the alleged meeting, had been the year when IKEA's first store was being heavily renovated. He was simply too busy with work to worry about politics. In fact, Ingvar had not attended any such meeting, and despite the news fiasco this initial story caused, Ingvar had done one thing correctly. He was honest about everything, and when people heard his version of the story, the controversy died down. At least, that was until 1998. This time, another news story broke out, alleging that Ingvar had financed the start of IKEA by borrowing Nazi money. Again, another barrage of headlines rolled out in the newspapers, but Ingvar didn't really care about the claim that he'd borrowed money from the Nazis. He was furious that anyone thought he'd borrowed money at all. In his words, they could have accused me of murder, but not of borrowing money. In the entire lifespan of IKEA, Ingvar had never taken out a loan, so the claim was totally false. This time though, IKEA's
What? That aside from the Nazi stuff, he never took out a loan. How the hell did he finance it? Damn, no wonder this business is successful. He never borrowed money. How do you expand and not borrow money? Anyways, let's continue.
Employees didn't demand answers. Instead, they offered their full support for Ingvar, and he was so grateful that he broke down in tears. However, rumours of Ingvar's involvement with the Nazis never completely went away. For example, throughout his life, he had remained acquainted with a Swedish Nazi activist and Holocaust denier, and Ingvar even invited him to his wedding and called him a great man. It's also known that in the 80s, some of IKEA's suppliers in East Germany were using forced labour, and it's very likely that IKEA's executives were aware of it and did nothing to intervene. But either way, despite the controversies surrounding Ingvar's past, IKEA was on its way to conquering the world.
Interesting. Before we skirt on, which he's going to do, think about it though. If his grandma was a Nazi or, Nazi supporter, he grew up with these people in his lives. What can you do? And like I said, Nazism is disgusting, horrible. Don't want to delve into the past, but wow. However, every major business, some of the biggest corporations in the world, especially in Europe, especially in Germany, some of these car manufacturers especially, some of them used to build friggin' arms for Germany and tanks, used to build tanks for them and all this type of stuff. And it's consumer goods that we use today have that history. Just because they had a past, does that mean that they should be boycotted now? That's the question. Because I mean, as a black person, should I know it's not the same, but it's like should I not be friends with white people because they might be descended from great grandparents were slave owners? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Maybe your ancestor was a bad person, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. Same with a business. Just because a business a long time ago was financed by a bad regime, does that mean that we should boycott that business today in 2025 or 1998? Does it make sense? Doesn't make sense. It just sounds like his competitors were just trying to crush his business because he was clearly very successful, very wealthy. And when you're very successful and you're very wealthy, people are envious and people are trying to get that money and that success from you. They want to crush you, your competition. We want your money. Yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't mean that he was a good man. People say he was very good to the people in the business and he was very friendly and he gave them all hugs, but it doesn't mean that he didn't have negative thoughts and Nazi kind of views. Nazism is an interesting one as well. That's something I'm interested in delving into, learning about, because the evil that was committed under that kind of ideology is very fascinating. It's horrible, but it's very fascinating because the people within that regime really psychologically believed what they were doing was the right thing. And the propaganda that was spewed to get people to really see Jews as the enemy and see the West, certain countries as the enemy. And it's interesting, that type of control that they had on the people and the people under that regime is fascinating. Psychologically, it's fascinating. And it's do we still go through that today? You know what I mean? Is there still propaganda that is told to us today? Because we believe a lot of what our governments tell us, and we believe a lot of the things that we watch on the news, and Anyways, let's not go into conspiracies, but it's interesting how they were able to control the people to do the most heinous things. Anyways, I've digressed. Let's continue. Let's go back into IKEA because I've gone somewhere else. Let's get back into this.
Throughout the 90s, IKEA built more than 70 new megastores and became one of the world's strongest brands. And in 2008, IKEA took the throne as the world's largest furniture retailer. IKEA's success and the fact the company had remained private meant Ingvar became one of the richest people in the world. And yet, he still maintained his frugal lifestyle. He lived in the same house, drove the same old Volvo for 20 years, and always flew economy. Ingvar passed away at 91 years old in 2018. Today, IKEA...
I never knew. So he lived all the way up until 2018. Wow. Didn't know that. I didn't know his story as well. Wow.
Has well over 450 locations, and so it's not surprising that some crazy stories have happened at IKEA.
Let me see. Where? Yeah, Thailand. Yeah, there was one in Bangkok. Okay. Wow. So there's none in Africa. Yeah, there's none in Africa, none in South America. Interesting. It's just basically Europe, parts of Asia, and Australia. So it's not everywhere. It's not really in the southern hemisphere. But it's, yeah, IKEA really is killing it. It's killing it. And I do admire him. I do admire his business. His business. Just to build something this big, one person. Well, not one person, obviously he had a team of people, but pretty incredible.
IKEA stores. There's a few troubling ones, like when a 12-year-old boy ran away from home and got lost in an IKEA for 6 days. But there's also some heartwarming stories too,
6 days?
like the couple who met for the first time at their local IKEA and decided to have their wedding there as well. Whatever you think of IKEA, there's no denying it's one of the most fascinating companies around. They've sparked several important retail innovations that other companies around the world now use. And the story of Ingvar's family goes to show what endless perseverance can achieve. But if you want to hear the story of another Scandinavian company that makes you build what you buy, you have to check out the messed up history of Lego.
I will be watching that. That's the next one I'm going to watch. His videos are insane, guys. Have you seen, number one, his storytelling is, and the animation and the edits in this video, just incredible. I'm so jealous. Like, I need to, yeah. Anyways, I'm going to look more into that channel because that channel is really cool. But the story of IKEA, wow. Did not know all of that. Didn't know the links to Nazi Germany. That's pretty wild. Didn't know there was a Swedish Nazi party. I didn't know that. Need to look into that. Yeah, guys, let me know in the comment section if you knew this story, if you know the story, if you've ever been to the original IKEA store, or do you have if you have a parent, you know when you get, yeah, anyways, if you have a parent or anyone that you know that's been to the original IKEA store, I would love to know in the comment section below. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, I will see you very soon.